Hello again. In this video, I'll go over the tripods and runes for the Energy Overflow Soulfist that I use. Most of this information is already available somewhere like Maxroll or Lowoa. But I want to provide the reasoning behind the choices and perhaps provide some alternatives in each row of the tripods. Flash Step. It's what makes Soulfist go zoom, especially for Energy Overflow because they don't care about its high energy cost. You can keep this skill at 7, and you can also pick Instant Preparation here for the shorter cooldown, which gives you more quick recharge rune procs. But I prefer Excellent Mobility here for quicker repositioning and clutch plays. For the second role, there's really no better option. Victory Shout here gives you a backup self buff in case your energy release is on cooldown. As for runes, Quick Recharge is a great choice since each cast is a chance to proc it. Rage is not bad either. Bolting Clash. Sometimes I replace this skill with Pulverizing Palm if I don't need to counter. I pick Enhanced Speed here so I can move on with my other skills faster. But Volant here is a great choice too if you prefer the extra distance. On the Korean server, you can get enough skill points to get this to 10. There, Aggressiveness is good for the extra DPS, or you can pick Tough Shoulder for much faster animation. Because of its low cooldown, I use the Bleed rune for this spell. Energy Release. Quick Prep, to line up with Merciless Pummel's cooldown. For the second role, I usually run Tenacity unless there's a strong need for a cleanse, in which case you run the Shout of Purification. Push Immunity is huge. It feels really bad when you get interrupted and none of your spells are buffed. And lastly, Ready Attack for sure. It's also a good tripod slot to invest in levels because it buffs all of your skills. For runes, I prefer using Gale Wind, but I've seen Rage being used here too, especially for robust Spirit Soulfist. Merciless Pummel, the biggest pumper for all Soulfists. Hard Hitter, Cold Hearted, Double Up, fairly straightforward. But just for the fun of it, I recommend switching around the tripod for the second row just to check out the different animations the skill has, even if they may not be viable choices for DPS. Any tripods for this skill is a great investment, but a lot of eyes are going to be on these tripods, so be sure to snatch it up if you can find a great deal. I prefer using the highest level of Gale Wind on this skill. As a general rule of mine, I like saving the highest level for the longest animation for the best value possible. E-Blast, a recent addition to Soulfist meta. It feels almost like a second Merciless Pummel. For the first choice, I use Tenacity for the extra immunity since ranged hit is a little bit overkill, but the range is great for PvP. Weak Point Detection gives you more damage on any grudge related content. As for the last role, you would actually want the faster and weaker Ferocious Strike here. Barrage of Blows has some issues. The channel time is so slow that by the time you get to the concentrated beam section, you'll have more than 30% energy and lose out on a class engraving damage buff. The skill locks your character down for a long time you might need to cast other spells or reposition. Gale Wind is the way to go for this skill. Crippling Barrier, the silent killer. For the first role, it has perhaps the best quick prep value out of all the spells, going up to 8 seconds reduction. As for the second role, Weak Point Detection might seem like a good choice, but the better choice here is actually Hard Hitter because of how it works with the third tripod option. And for that, either Keen Judgment or Desperate Attack is fine. The only major difference is that one pulls and the other pushes. There might be a small difference in animation time, but I honestly can't tell myself. As for runes, again, Gale Wind. Heavenly Squash, or as I call it, the High Five. This one is interesting. The first role has Hard Hitter and Quick Prep. While they both seem like good options, Hard Hitter is a better choice here to keep this skill in line with the damage cycle. Also note that Quick Prep flat CDR is applied before other multiplicative CDR like Gems and Swiftness, so the actual reduction is less than appears on the tooltip. On the second roll, Harsh Oath is the go-to because it makes High Five's animation to near non-existent. Burning Hands is okay, but the damage over time isn't all that impressive, and it's another tripod to invest in. I would prefer the shorter animation so I can move on to other skills sooner and make up for the missing damage with an extra tick or two from Crippling Barrier. For the third role, Exquisite Attack. Look, I hate this tripod RNG too when the boss is super tiny, but the damage increase is just too good, especially with the tripod levels. For runes, I use Bleed since Galewind does pretty much nothing here. This skill is also a good choice to use Conviction on because of its multi-hits, pairing it with Judgment on Force Orb. Speaking of which, we're moving on to our last skill. Quick Prep is good here, since Energy Overflow doesn't care about energy cost, and the animation is already really short. For the second role, Powerful Wave is the ideal choice. While you can achieve a higher potential damage number with Growing Wave, you'll rarely be far enough for this to work, especially with the option Scattering Wave for the last tripod. However, if you're some Hitmaster ranged Soulfist, I can see you comboing Growing Wave with Surging Wave, which at an optimal distance, you might deal just as much if not even more damage. For runes, Bleed is a great option here if you're not running Judgment. However, I'll run Overwhelm here for raid content. If you've played Soulfist long enough, you'll probably notice that this skill does a shockingly high amount of stagger. So I put my Bleed runes on Bolting Clash and High Five instead, but the choice is up to you. And that's all for the tripods and runes I run. But before we leave here, I want to quickly bring up the upcoming tripod inventory revamp coming to the Korean server in their summer update. As we start collecting level 4 tripods, you'll probably notice how crazy low the transfer rate is. And sure, you can use the guaranteed inventory transfer trick to secure your level 4s, but it's tough to match the right slots across all of your different gear pieces. But with the recent announcement of a tripod system revamp on Loaon, tripods will be saved in inventories similar to a character-bound engraving system, so that when they do any future character bounces, you can freely select your other tripod options without having to re-level them as long as you have them saved, assuming by using the same RNG system with Powder of Sage. So while this is convenient and all, the key part is how they will transition to this new system. The presumption here is that all tripod levels saved in your current bank will automatically be learned when the new system releases. This is certainly convenient for players in a Korean server who already have their tripod set, but this is huge for NAEU players who had just started building their tripods. So this is the plan. I'm expanding my tripod inventories and going to start saving the level 4 tripods that I may find myself or buy from the market to those open slots, no matter how mismatched those slots are. Then I'll just sit and wait for the update to come. Afterwards, I can either resell the pieces on the market or attempt a transfer. But my plan is to trade them to my other Soulfists for them to save. But before you start spending your gold and fions on this venture, here's a few disclaimers. There's a chance that me and a few other guildies of mine are wrong, and that we might not get that system. This is based on the translations on the Korean server, and there's no telling when this update will come to NAEU. But I believe in the power of form posters to speed this process up. And this is it for real this time. This is probably going to be my last Soulfist guide video in the series. I hope these videos help you guys, and feel free to ask me any questions you have. See ya!